Howdy everybody, today I am going to show you how to convert an HHM model to an HHF model for Neverwinter Nights 2 using Blender and using a pre-made blend file that I created to do that. This tutorial is going to be quick and not as painful as the others as far as the learning curve. It's actually really more automated, and I'll just briefly explain it as I go, but hopefully this shouldn't take too long, and let's get started. So what I've done is I've placed already some files inside a folder in my override. Okay, here I placed a diffuse map along with a normal map to go with it, and I've used an MDB of an armor that an armor that I have already modeled, weighted, and put into the game. It's not in any servers yet, but it's just a model that I just have on hold. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to convert this HHM model to an HHF model. I'm going to show you the process in which I do it, and I'm also going to show you a few things along the way. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the MDB cloner, and I want to grab this HHM model. The reason why I name it HHM CL Body 01 is so that I'm able to preview the model in the character creation screen. That way I don't have to go into an actual module to test it. I can kind of view it live in the character creation, which is one of the first times in the game where you can actually start viewing models. It just helps me create a faster workflow and to pretty much to get things underway faster. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File. I'm going to load MDB, and I'm going to load the armor. In this case, the outfit right here. It's already selected. I'm going to change it out to PHHF. This makes it into a human female armor, cloth 01. I'm going to save the clone. You're going to see it pop up here. Now that I popped it up in here, I'm going to go ahead and open up the Neverwinter Nights 2 game so I can quickly show you what happens exactly. And what does happen is essentially the armor gets duplicated to the female type version, except that one thing that doesn't happen is that it doesn't automatically weight it. I'm just going to go into a regular module here, just start the regular uninvited guest module that comes preloaded with the campaign packs. I'm going to go ahead and create character, and what I mean by that is when I select human, here's the armor right here. It's more of a paladin type armor. Just go ahead and spin it around, get a preview of it. And like I said, it's weighted and everything, and it's kind of fitted perfectly. Well, not perfectly, because that's more of a biased opinion, but it's kind of fitted to how I see good for the model. Now, when I converted it over to HHF, you see what happens here is if I swap between the two, and don't mind the faces, that's just something I'm testing for an override pack that I'm making on a later release. When I switch between the two, you see nothing really changes. The mass of the armor, the outfit itself, just converts over to the HHF. Obviously, females have a different skeletal structure. Now, this is, if you want it like this, that's fine. If you want to make a more muscular type body armor, you can do that, and it works. But a lot of people don't like that. What you want to do is essentially you want to make it fit, scale it down so that it fits the female body much better to its dimensions in game. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to edit live, and you're going to see the changes live. So I'm just going to leave Neverwinter Nights 2 open. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up this HHM to HHF2 file. And the reason I call it HHF2 is because I had to make a first rendition and make edits in here. So I'll probably rename that afterward just to give it a more formal name. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Okay. Now, when that opens up, like so, you're going to notice it has two skeletons. It's going to have the HHF and the HHM skeleton. I've turned off the HHF, so you really can't touch it and edit it, but you can edit the HHM, and it's already on pose mode. And if you don't know what that is, that pretty much allows you to pose the skeleton to move around the mesh that's binded to it, or bound to it. And so simply in order to do this, what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and load up that MDB that we've converted over. Note that this only works once the MDB has been converted over, because it reassigns the name, the object, and everything within the MDB itself. So I'm going to go ahead and go to File, Import, Neverwinter Nights 2. I'm going to go to my where I have it at. In this case, it's already preloaded here onto my override template armor. I'm going to load that up, but first I'm going to click my remove doubles and find an armature. I'm going to go ahead and click here, and once it loads in, you can already see it kind of did some distortion to the armor. Now this, sometimes you might have to go in and do little fixes, but for the most part this gets it right somewhat on the nail, because I don't want to ever say my stuff is perfect, because that's just me being really cocky and it's unnecessary. So I'm going to go ahead first and clear off what it imported as doubles. I'm going to delete the second version of Coles by delete hierarchy, and not regular delete. The reason why I want to delete hierarchy is so you delete all the bones within it. Okay, and what I'm going to do here, since I'm not going to go through explaining why it does this, all I'm going to tell you is that I have the armature preset to automatically move itself into the position of the female armor, so it pretty much matches to it. All you have to do is go into the actual HHFCL body, which is our armor here. Go into your modifiers tab and just click apply. Okay, once we apply, and you're going to go ahead and delete that HHM skeleton, get rid of it. We no longer need it because it's no longer an HHM skeleton, and we're going to assign it to the HHF skeleton. And I usually copy here with Control C and Control V in there, and just export it out. File, export, Neverwinter Nights 2, smooth TSEams, alpha test is the only things I click. If I'm wrong, someone go ahead and correct me if I've been missing something. And I'm going to go ahead and overwrite the PHHFCL body 01.mdb. Double click there. Once that's there, I'm going to go ahead and go back into Neverwinter Nights 2, click onto the male, and click off of it to the female, and we have a converted armor. Now, this is just from how I see it. Sometimes you may have to do little edits like this, simply because it all depends on how you originally have the armor. All the weights transfer as is, so nothing should ever change. So if there's ever weight issues, that's usually on your end. Usually you have to reweight the original model because something's wrong with it. So nothing really changes so much with weights. Actually, nothing changes. And so I'm going to show you real quickly while we're at it how to make these quick fixes, these quick edits to something like this where we want to make this hand longer. And this is also a good technique used whenever you want to do minor edits on an already weighted armor without having to go into edit mode and edit the actual the mesh itself. Okay, so we're going to edit using the actual in-game bones. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these out to be a little bit longer, and maybe if I look at it forward, maybe move them out just maybe about a point or two. And you can always edit that in the actual skeleton. Maybe I'll do that before I export the skeleton with this tutorial. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back into my my edited skeleton here, and I recommend, if you don't want to accidentally override this blend file, which I will be distributing, create a copy in case you do accidentally have a habit of clicking save. Now, one thing that I want to point out is usually when you do an armor edit and you want to make sure the hand reaches the most, you want to get to the center point of these two right in the center of this little ball here. And what that's going to do is going to make sure that your hand reaches the wrist of the armor. So what I'm going to do now is I'm simply going to make this selectable skeleton. I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate, but I'm also going to hit Escape because I don't want to move it. I just want to duplicate it in place. So hit Escape, and now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and lock the underlayer, the original one again. And what I'm going to do with the new one, I'm going to click the underlayer, or I'm sorry, the new layer, and I'm going to go ahead and open it up here. And then I'm also going to go to modifiers, or to the properties of the skeleton. I'm going to turn on X-ray, and this is going to allow me to view the skeleton through the actual armor. This is important just simply because you won't be able, it'd be harder to select without it. Okay, and one thing I want to do is, since I'm going to edit this skeleton and I want to make the edits factor into this armor, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change out the object to fit the new skeleton. So I'm going to click it to this new one, 001 version, which is the new one we duplicated. Go ahead and click it there. All right, once I do that, I am going to go ahead and go into pose mode, which is if you collapse, if you expand the skeleton 001, you'll see pose, click pose. Now you'll notice that when you select certain bones, they're blue. Okay, now what this is going to do is, because the CL body 01 is now bound to this skeleton, whatever edits we make on this skeleton will factor in to the CL body 01, considering that the weights are all named the same and they bind to the skeleton. So what we want to do is, as we stated here, I said I wanted to come out just a little bit, and you can do this with the whole arm. What I'll do is I'll select this one, unless you feel like doing this one, but I recommend if you're making whole arm edits, you just move the entire arm. So select the first one, hit shift, select this one, shift, hold it down still, select that one. I'm gonna hit R for rotate. I'm gonna hit Control and Shift to move it in small increments, and I'm gonna move it over just 1 notch. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing for the other side because you want everything in uniform. So R, Control Shift, 1 notch. Okay, now as you can see, our new skeleton is moving, but the old one isn't, because that's gonna be our reference guide. So now we can look at see how this armor here is now moved over, but it's also centered to this ball, which leads us to believe that it's going to look better in our in-game module when we test it. Okay, now that that's done, what we are also going to do is we're going to make it longer, because we want it, like I said, to reach the inside or the middle of the ball. Now you'd have to have an eye for this, but if you can see, we want this to touch here. So we're going to hit Scale and then hit Z to lock it in the Z axis, which is for the length. And we're just going to bring it in slowly. And I'm going to hit Scale again. I'm going to undo so we can see that better. Okay, I'm going to hit Scale, Z to lock in the Z, and I'm going to hold Shift. Shift allows us to be more precise in our scale. I'm going to scale it to just about there. Now keep track of the number that we're scaling at on the bottom left of the screen. One thing I should have done is actually, let me do that now. Press S, Z, hold Control and Shift. So that way we move in small increments. 1, 2. And you know, I'm just gonna leave it for 2 just for the sake of it. And usually this just helps in general with moving in uniform, because unless you want to write down that number that you scale it to and copy that over to the next time you scale on the other side, that's your choice. So I'm gonna hit these 3 by selecting one, holding Shift and selecting the others, and I'm going to scale it on the Z axis 2 notches. So Scale, Z, Control Shift, 1, 2. Okay, so now we scaled in uniform, and now that that's done, that's the only edit I needed to make. So what I do now is to confirm those edits to the mesh. I'm going to go back into my CL Body 01, and I'm going to go ahead and click Apply. Now this keeps this, what this does is it applies those changes to the mesh, and since we no longer need the skeleton because it was only used to temporarily move our mesh around, I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Okay, and now we have our mesh moved, except that now our mesh is not applied to any skeleton. We're going to reassign it back to the old skeleton. The old skeleton is not moved, and that's a good thing. So we're going to go to Add Modifier, Add Armature, go here, select HHF Scale. I like to copy it here. As always, I say this in all my tutorials, and paste it there. And I'm just going to go ahead and export it out. File, Export, Neverwinter Nights 2. And those are pre-selected already from the first export. I'm going to go ahead and click right here and overwrite it. And now that I've overwritten it, I'm going to go back into here. I'm going to click on Male, and I'm going to click on Female, and we'll see those changes that have been made, as we can see here. Now, obviously, you want to bring it back 1, 2, and we can go ahead and do that. I'll do that real quickly without explaining anything, that we can see how quick it is just to bring it back 1. Looks like it has to come back just a little bit. Now, when you're done after this, what you can do is you can just make those changes to the armature itself, the original blend file, which I'll probably do just to see how it comes out, and if it's better for most armors. It all depends on how the original armor was positioned in the first place. Depending on how it looks, I'll go ahead and save it and export it that way, and give you guys the files that way. So what I'm going to quickly do to do this quickly is to move that arm back, as we stated here. I want to move this back a little bit so it's centered within the glove even better. I'm going to go ahead and do it again. So I'm going to go back into my regular view mode. I'm going to make this selectable, click the skeleton, Shift D, press Escape, go ahead and bring that down, go into here. I'm going to reassign it back to the 001, so that way changes on the 001 are affected to the CL Body 01. Okay, I'm going to go into the pose mode, but also I'm going to click X-ray, and I'm going to click this one and just this one now. There's no need to edit the entire arm for a small move like that unless you want to. You know what, for the sake of purpose and getting it done, I'm going to select all of them. The reason I can select all of them is because they're not separating from each other. They're all going to move in unison. So I'm going to press 3. Okay, now it's a little difficult to see. And I'm going to do is I'm going to hide my X-ray for now. Okay, because now we're only going to factor in what it's doing to the one underneath. Okay, I'm going to hit R for rotate. And I'm going to hold Shift, Control Shift, and move it back 1. Just like that. Bam. And then we can see the old skeleton underneath is kind of centered in within. And now that I'm happy with moving it back 1, I'm going to go back into my CL Body, click Apply, delete the new skeleton, which is just used for reference to moving, or it was just used to move in reference to our mesh, and delete it. Okay. Go back into my CL body and reassign it back to the old skeleton. Copy, paste it here, file, export, file, export, Neverwinter Nights 2, everything should still be pre-selected. Override the PHHF CL body 01, open up Neverwinter Nights, click off of it, click back on it, and there, as you can see, it's aligned correctly. And that is how we properly convert an HHM to an HHM to an HHF body type. All right. Now, one thing to also note that sometimes when I've converted, I've also had to play with the chest a little bit because it's a really flat-chested, it's made for a male, so you may have to pop out that chest. To do something like that, simply what I do is while in the model, I'll just go ahead and turn off the skeleton. I will go into edit mode. I'll go into the side view, and then I'll go and hold control, draw yourself a little circle around the chest area. Now this is crudely done, so if this doesn't come out right, don't get. Usually I spend more time than what I'm doing here. I'm gonna go to enable proportional editing. If you don't know what proportional editing does, you can watch my helmet and hair tutorial where I explain it more in a better way than I would right now. I'm gonna click grab. I'm gonna bring that scale of influence down, and I'm just gonna kind of bring it out just a little bit. Now this is very unrealistic. Maybe hit rotate, bring that out, and see, that's already coming out weird. And then rotate it a little more. Maybe grab and pinch it in a little bit, or actually scale and pinch it in just a little bit. Maybe bring it up just a little bit more. Now, this may or may not look good or realistic at all. This is just a lazy way of doing it. I'm gonna hit Z, get out of there. Now, that could be wrong. I mean, you can make the waist, the hips bigger and stuff like that, whatever you want to do. This is just me lazily making one edit to show you what can be done to fix that. Okay, so before, after. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hit File, Export, Neverwinter Nights 2 with that edit. Just override the original. Okay, come back in here, click off of it, back on it, and we'll see the edits there. See. All right. So, and any other changes you got to make after that are your own, but it's a good way of getting back in there. Essentially, what this blend file can do for you is to kind of preset. It's a preset for making your skeleton refit the HHF model from the HHM. And when you're done, I recommend never saving over it. Just kind of keep the blend file so you can just easily delete or press OK, close it out. And then when you're ready to start a new one, simply repeat the process. So I'll just open up this again. I'm not going to do the process all over. I'm just going to show you. We have two skeletons. We have the HHM, which has already been moved to better fit the HHF skeleton. Once you import your model, you go ahead and apply it and delete that one out, and then start working for the HHF model. If you're confused how this works, just simply watch the beginning again and see how I did it. Simply import the model after it's already been cloned to an HHF from the HHM. You'll import it, you'll convert it, you'll apply its changes, delete out the HHM skeleton, and start working from the HHF on out. Okay? Hopefully that was helpful for some of you. Hopefully that made sense. I am now going to go ahead and make those quick edits to the blend file and go ahead and export that out with this video tutorial. Thanks, everybody.